Thank you. What do we want?
Equality! But first, let me take a selfie.
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Equality!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Equality!
When?
Now!
What?
But first, let me take a selfie.
Are you just looking for coverage, right?
Hey, if you...
I mean, you get...
Do not interrupt me! Do not interrupt me!
Do not interrupt me! Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Oh, now you're gonna play the okay. So you're a Miss Andrews. Got it. All right. Miss Andrews doesn't exist. You hate men. Let's take the men talking down to me, please. I say the same thing I do to him as I do to you. Hey guys. I gotta go.
Sam from the right-wing news website Breitbart London. Welcome back to the Daily Politics. Does the reporting of negative incidents reportedly involving migrants, like the ones in Cologne, does that have an impact on the view and perception of migrants and refugees here in the UK?
Yeah, I think it almost certainly does. It certainly had an overnight impact in Germany. When you look at the polls, the YouGov poll that came out, which showed that 46% were against the rate of migration in Germany, now 60% are against this rate. I think that's obviously going to have ramifications in Britain. We don't see ourselves as non-Europeans. Even Eurosceptics in this country realise that we are a part of Europe. They would just say that they don't want to be part of the European Union. So there's going to be big ramifications, actually.
Right, but is that overnight change of opinion, as you see it, wrong?
No, I've argued from the outset that you began the program, the segment on 1.1 million migrants. Actually, my sources in the European security services are telling me it's more like 1.5 million because they don't count overstayers. They can't count people that they don't know.
No, my question was, is it wrong to have changed people, to change their minds so dramatically as a result of a number of incidents in their general view towards migrants?
No, I don't think so, because this is where these are where the warnings were originally anyway. It's just a case that at the beginning, at the forefront of this, those people weren't listening. Now they've actually had to see it, and these people have had to go through really bad situations for people to see this problem.
I mean, there were warnings that countries like Germany wouldn't be able to cope from people from within Germany. So are you surprised by this change following the accusations of sexual assault by groups of migrants or refugees in Germany?
These sexual assaults are obviously a bad thing, and no one is going to say otherwise, but I think it's been blown out of all proportion. I mean, I have a few months ago I had a 16-year-old boy murder another 16-year-old boy about half a mile from my parish, from my church. Doesn't even make the national press. But this sort of thing suddenly becomes a way of focusing all our anxieties and so forth. Yes, incorporating large numbers of people, and from my mind, the more the merrier, because they're being saved from a terrible situation in Syria and parts of North Africa and so forth, that we should celebrate that fact. And yes, it's going to be difficult, but actually I think we should absolutely have to be up for all the troubles that come.
Because you're blaming an entire group of people for the actions of a few bad apples.
I don't think anybody's trying to claim that every migrant going into Europe is going to start raping people. I mean, you had the Charlie Hebdo cover showing that, the 3-year-old boy, Alan Kurdi, who died trying to make it over to Europe, would grow up to become, in their words, a bum groper. But it's a satirical magazine. They do that provocation intentionally. They do it to show how ridiculous something like that is. They're not actually saying that. And nobody's saying that all these migrants are going to come up and be rapists or sexual assaulters or robbers. But what we're saying is we don't know who the people coming into Europe are. There are criminals amongst the migrants. There are terrorists amongst the migrants. We've seen that. We know that to be a fact now. That is
and we
true.
have homegrown. We have as many
Absolutely.
more homegrown, and we have
any
as
arguments
many.
from me.
We have as many people who are born and bred in this country who are rapists, who are criminals, who are. And why is it that we are demonising?
So why import more?
A particular. Because they're called the population in general. That's what they're called. I mean, we're not. These are not people who are.
Why not proper background checks?
Sorry?
Why not proper background checks?
I don't think that's practical. And also, I have to say...
So just let them all in?
The people... Yes, I'm a let them all in.
Just open the floodgates, let everyone in.
No, I've got a yes.
Uncle Tom Cobley and ISIS.
I've just said yes. Why do you keep on saying ISIS like that? Why do you keep on presuming, cursing these people with that? They're running away from ISIS, they're running away from their bombs, they're running away from this war that we've done too much to stoke up and create. And actually, if we close the doors on them, we're doubling up on the moral...
I didn't say close the door, by the way. I said proper background checks. There's a difference.
Right, let me just ask you, though, one question. Do you think, Raheem, that there is a case of Islamophobia here that's sort of masquerading as anti-migrant or anti-refugee, using the sort of sentiments you're saying, actually, they're just anti-Islam?
I have a big problem with the word Islamophobia. Being somebody who was raised in a Muslim family, having had anti-Muslim sentiment aimed at me, I have a problem with calling an anti-mass migration sentiment and actually weeding out. It's the same thing as you said. It's a few people in there that might be instinctively hateful towards Islam that you're tarring the whole anti-migration movement for those people. So it's the same thing. The same argument can be had back and forth.
But conflating the two does the same sort of thing, doesn't it? I mean, in the end, isn't it going to be exploited by the far right and extremist movements?
I think you're overestimating the reach of the far right now, especially in Germany. When you look at the Pegida movement, they have strict rules about what they are and are not allowed to do on their marches. When 5,000 people took to the streets in Dresden last night, they are not allowed to drink, they are not allowed to shout, and if they are doing those things, they are kicked out of the Pegida movement.
Right. I mean, do you think that it is a little lazy and complacent if people do suggest that this is just Islamophobia?
It is Islamophobia. I mean,
what is Islamophobia? Any criticism of Islam?
It's patently clear that the way in which people are being targeted and the language that's used about Islam and Muslims is clearly provocative, is clearly, I mean, and indeed through our government and the prevent strategy and all that sort of nonsense, it's targeting Muslims. It doesn't help. And what we've got to trust in this country is we've got to trust that the rule of law is blind to all that, is blind to that. That's how it should be, and we shouldn't be targeting Muslims. Refugees should be welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have...
According to Pew Research, the net worth of white families in 2013 was $141,000. For black families, it was $11,000, even less than the $19,000 it was in 2007. According to economist Edward Wolf of the University of New York, excluding vehicles and other durables, the median black family worth is just $1,700, while 40% of black families have zero or negative wealth. White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
At the beginning, I just want to separate, for the purposes of this discussion, what's happening at the University of Missouri on the race front, which is very charged, and you can understand some upset over what's happened with the race issues. Separate that for today from call the cops on this campus if someone hurts your feelings. If someone hurts your feelings, and that woman at Yale yelling at the professor for saying, I think Halloween costumes should be allowed and we shouldn't be censoring them. How do you sleep at night? I'm going to leave. Good, go. I mean, I look at that. You tell me, Nomiki, because you're going to defend these people. I look at that and say, I can't wait for my kids to get out there in the world against these people. I can't wait. Well, they're going to kick some... That's my reaction. Am I wrong?
Well, okay, to be fair, these are not administration, these are students. These are 20-year-olds who are reacting, and it's a very racially charged environment. You know, words matter. And so when that letter was sent on behalf of an administration official, somebody who's supposed to represent the students, to create, you look at the documents that Yale sends out, the application documents, and it's all about having an inclusive community.
This guy was defending Halloween.
Well, he wasn't defending Halloween. He was defending being offensive to a community of people that are being marginalized. I mean, 7% of the Yale...
He was saying if you want to go as Tatiana, the frog princess, you should be allowed to.
No. He was acknowledging that someone who shows up in blackface, it's okay, it's a joke.
And you think that should be banned? You should, Halloween, that should be banned. And what if you want a guy who wants to dress like a girl? Should he be banned?
Listen, there are the stereotypes. There's plenty of stereotypes that we have changed over time. Things that would now be totally unacceptable. We had this debate about things
gender expression would be offensive if you want. So a guy dressed up as a female nurse.
That's not for white people to determine. That's not. These things are not for the people who are doing it to determine. It is for those who feel hurt. If you feel hurt,
that's fantastic. I hope you have young kids like just exactly my kid's age. Ben, you take it. I understand the offense. I understand you go to the race place and all that what happened with the swastika, but you can't wear the Halloween costume you want unless no one finds it offensive.
Well, now the selectively offended get to run the rest of the country. I mean, this is what we are creating. We are creating a society of panty-waist fascists. What we are creating is a group of people who are oversensitive to everything and then are willing to call the cops as soon as they are offended. It's actually incredible, and it's a violation of the First Amendment, which you saw with a professor from the Mass Communications Department at Missouri telling reporters that they have no right to be there, and at Yale you have students shouting people down. If this is the climate that we're supposed to create, if this is supposed to create openness and tolerance on the campus, I'm missing the openness and tolerance in let's call the police if I'm mildly offended because my feelings have been hurt. I mean, this is creating a country of crazy people. How can you watch this and not go crazy and think that everyone who's involved in it is crazy in the first place?
How about that woman from the communications department, Nomiki?
Listen,
shutting down the student reporters from filming the protests she was promoting. Guess how you promote them? Put them on
TV. I do agree with that, and I think that Josh Earnest has said the same thing. There's a very thick line between being politically incorrect and being racist, and words matter. So when a community of people that has been perpetually marginalized at institutions across America over history feels offended, we should acknowledge that. And I think that these protests are a reflection of a community of minorities that feel unacknowledged and not respected. And so, Ben, I read your article today, and I was shocked by the language you used. You were saying that it's time for the right to fight. Yeah. No, but you read his column. Evidence. All this is screaming and feelings. How about like a shred of evidence, even for the incidents that actually happened at Missouri that drove this? Really? Where was the police report exactly when it came to, for example, the first N-word incident that led all of this? There was no police report on any of that. In the second incident at the N-word at the University of Missouri, the administration investigated, and the kid's under investigation. In the third incident with the cop car, with the car hitting the guy.
Let me just ask you this, because we're short on time. You tell me, Nomiki, whether we are training these kids to be little cupcakes who never have to encounter anything offensive. Assuming everything you said is offensive, they never have to encounter it because they can call the cops or they can get their administrators fired, or whether it's better to educate them that there are offensive things in life, there are insulting things in life, there are people who will say very incorrect or impolite things about you, politically incorrect things about you, very publicly and in a way that you might feel very offended by, and you have to deal with that in life.
I think people understand that, but I think that this is a blame the victim situation. We should be ridding the world of bigotry. We should be talking about that rather than blaming it on the victim who feels hurt disrespected on campus, who doesn't feel heard by their administrators.
I love that utopia. It doesn't exist. It's not realistic. It does not exist. Good luck getting rid of all the bigotry.
The victim.
Well, we can
all the
look at
bigotry.
it.
We're just going to wipe the world. We'd love to, but it's not reality. I
They
gotta
literally just fired a white guy for being a white guy, and he's the victim.
Confirmed kill.